So if you're like me, you probably use Spotify. I mean, 500 million of us do. And you've probably had that thought. You're listening to your favorite songs, you're paying that monthly fee, but how much of your money actually gets to the artists you love? You know, the whole world of music has been completely flipped on its head by streaming. But under all those playlists and instant access, there's this really loud and growing debate about whether the very system that saved the music industry is now actually failing the people who create the music in the first place. Okay, let's get into it. Right, let's make this super personal. You pay your subscription every month, let's call it $10.99. Over that month, you stream, say, 1,000 songs. Some are from superstars, some are from indie bands you just discovered. So who gets a piece of your $10.99? Does it go to that one artist you had on repeat all month long? Well, the answer is way more complicated and honestly, way more surprising than you probably think. So, in this explainer, we're literally going to follow the money. First, we'll dig into the big problem with streaming today. Then, we're going to trace that money trail to see where it all goes. After that, we'll explore the whole debate over a fair way to pay artists, uncover the real power struggle happening behind the scenes, and finally, we'll take a look at what the future might hold, especially with AI changing everything. To really get the problems we're facing now, we've got to go back to the beginning of the whole digital music thing. The industry was in an absolute free fall, just getting wrecked by illegal downloading. And then streaming comes along like a superhero to save the day. But now, that hero's reputation is kind of being questioned, especially since the industry has exploded into a market worth an estimated $153 billion. Let's just quickly walk through how we got here. Early 2000s, you remember this. Napster just blew everything up. Piracy was everywhere. By 2014, music industry revenue had hit rock bottom, just over $7 billion. But Spotify, which actually started way back in 2006, had a solution, a legal way to listen to everything. And it worked. The industry roared back. But you fast forward to today, and the artists themselves are telling a totally different story. Many of them are describing their earnings as pitiful returns. And listen, this isn't just a few artists complaining. A huge investigation by the UK Parliament laid it out in black and white. Even though streaming brought all these massive profits back to the big record labels, the talent, the artists, the songwriters, the people actually making the music, they're the ones losing out. So the big question is, the pie got way bigger, but the artist slice seems to have gotten smaller. How is that even possible? To figure that out, we have to, you guessed it, follow the money. This is where we get into the real nitty-gritty of how a simple tap on your phone, one single stream, gets turned into those tiny, tiny fractions of a cent that might, eventually, end up with the artist. Okay, this right here is the heart of the whole system. It's called the pro rata model. It works like this. All the money from every single subscriber and every ad, all of it, gets dumped into one giant pot for the month. Then Spotify counts up every single stream on the platform. If, say, a huge superstar got 5% of all the streams that month, their team gets 5% of that giant pot of money. But here's the kicker, the part that blows people's minds. Your money doesn't necessarily go to the artists you listen to. So even if you only listen to one small indie artist all month long, most of your $10.99 still goes into that giant pool to pay the biggest pop stars on the planet. And this chart shows what happens to the money even before it gets divvied up by streams. First, the streaming platform, like Spotify, takes its cut. That's about 30%. The rest goes to the people who own the rights to the song. The biggest chunk, around 55%, goes to the record label. And that leaves this little sliver, about 13%, for the artist and the songwriter combined. So out of every dollar a song makes, the creator gets about 13 cents. So what does that 13% slice actually look like in the real world? Well, it comes down to this number. On average, Spotify pays out somewhere between 0.3 and 0.5 of a single penny per stream. I mean, think about that. Not half a dollar, not even half a cent. So for an artist to make just $1,000, their song has to be streamed hundreds of thousands of times. These are real numbers from artists who've shared their earnings, and it really puts things in perspective. Check this out. Generation Lost and Born Human both got 2 million streams. That's huge, but Born Human earned over $1,000 less. That's because of things like where their listeners live, since payout rates are lower in some countries. And look at Harry Seaton. 250,000 streams got him just under $1,200. This is the reality. Millions of streams don't mean millions of dollars. For a lot of artists, it's not even enough to make a living. So all of this has kicked off this huge debate. If the pro rata model is the problem, what's the solution? Well, the main alternative people talk about is something called a user-centric model. And it's a completely different way of thinking about it. The difference is pretty massive. With a user-centric system, your personal 1099 is divided up only among the artists you actually streamed. So if you spent 100% of your time listening to that one niche indie artist, then once Spotify takes its cut, that artist would get the rest of your subscription money. In theory, this system directly connects your money to the artists you want to support. It rewards artists who have those dedicated, loyal fans, not just the ones who get the most streams overall. But, and this is a really big but, it's not some magic fix. A study of artists on SoundCloud, which is one of the only platforms that has tried a user-centric model, showed a really complicated picture. On the one hand, yeah, almost 20% of artists could see their income double, which is amazing and life-changing. But on the flip side, nearly 40% of artists could see their income drop, and drop by a lot. So it basically just creates a whole new set of winners and losers.
And here is a wild twist I did not see coming. Research from Duke's Business School actually built a mathematical model of the whole thing, and they came to a shocking conclusion. They argue that the current pro rata system might actually help smaller niche artists. Why? Well, their logic is that people who listen to a ton of music are often drawn to Spotify by the big superstars, but then they end up discovering and listening to smaller artists too. In that giant pro rata pool, the money from those superstar fans indirectly helps pay for the streams of the niche artists they discover. It's a really surprising counterargument. At the end of the day, this whole debate isn't just about math or what's fair. It's really about power. It's about who gets to control the modern music industry. This fight over how to pay artists is really just a symptom of a much bigger battle for who gets to call the shots. To really get it, you have to look at all the players on the board. You've got the old guard, the three major labels, Universal, Sony, and Warner, who've run the show for decades. Then you've got the new kings of the hill, the streaming platforms themselves. And caught right in the middle are all the independent artists, who are a bigger and bigger force every year. And now, you've even got governments and regulators stepping into the ring because they're sensing that this market isn't working for everyone. Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting. Researchers have found that getting a song onto a big Spotify playlist has a massive impact on its success. But look at what Spotify has been doing with that power. Between 2017 and 2020, the share of independent artists on those super important new music playlists jumped from 38% all the way up to 55%. Spotify is actively using its platform to break artists that aren't on major labels, which is a direct challenge to the majors' historic control. And the pressure is definitely building. That same UK Parliament report didn't just point out the problem. They called for a complete reset. They're pushing for a full-blown investigation into the major labels' market power and for brand new laws that would give performers a legally protected right to get paid fairly from streaming. This is a huge sign that the way things are might not last forever. So just as the industry is finally getting its head around the whole streaming economy, there's a new, maybe even bigger disruption coming over the horizon. The rise of artificial intelligence is forcing everybody to ask these huge, fundamental questions about copyright, creativity, and what music is even worth. This is the question on everybody's mind. Napster turned the industry upside down by making it easy to copy music, while AI threatens to do the same thing by making it easy to create music. And this is kicking off a whole new series of legal and ethical battles, all centered on one critical issue: how these AI models are trained. The whole challenge really breaks down into 3 steps. First, to learn how to make music, AI models have to listen to or ingest tons and tons of existing human-made music, all of which is copyrighted. Second, using what it learned, the AI can then create brand new songs that sound like they were made by any artist you can think of. Which brings us to the third and probably multi-trillion-dollar question. How do you pay the original artist whose life's work was used to train the machine? Should they even be paid at all? We are in completely new territory here. And at the end of the day, the fight over streaming payments and the coming battle over AI are really about the same thing. In a world where technology has made music infinite, available everywhere, all the time, and now even creatable by a machine, how do we decide what it's worth? And maybe more importantly, how do we make sure that the humans who pour their souls into creating it can afford to keep doing it? That is the unwritten future of music.